think we're live now.
Yeah.
Check it. It's a good time to test that. We live, Doc. We're live now. Yeah, we live, Doc.
Here we go.
We live. What's up, people? Come on in. We in here about 2 minutes early, but it's all good. Y'all know what to do. Tag everybody. What's up? What up, Anthony? What up, Crystal? Come on, let's go. Hit that share button. We about to talk. It's about to get real up in her. About to get real up in her. Come on in the room. Come on in the room. Yeah, we in here. Let's go. What's up? What up, Marcus? Hey, Crystal. I can hear her saying that. Hey, y'all. She done it. Love Miss Crystal. Come on in. Let's go. Get in here. We about to talk, y'all. We going to do some talking. We got to talk about some stuff up in here today. I know this, brother, so I know we finna have a good time and talk. What's up? What's up? Everybody come on in. Come on in. A little bit early. We still got another minute or so. Get up in here. Let's talk worship. Let's talk about this thing. In here. What up? What up? What up? What up? I put my name lowercase. I was going so fast and whatever. Little me, big him. Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant to do. I meant to do that. Yeah. What's up, y'all? Y'all come on in. We about to talk worship, man. We're gonna have a good time in here today. Y'all know how I like to say, y'all know what I like to say. Let's make Jesus famous and let's take worship worldwide. Hit that share button. Everybody share this. We are going to talk worship and talk about some things today. What up, Rhonda? What up, William Porter? Pastor William Porter from Raleigh, North Carolina. What's good? We're going to talk about some things today, and we're just going to keep it real. We're going to keep it 100. Y'all know if you ever watch these things, we say stuff that most people are thinking and don't want to say, but we talk about it. It's real life. It's what happens. It's expectations. It's different things that happen. And it's all meant to try to make this thing work together. We're not here to bash anyone, but we're just trying to make things work as best as they possibly can. So we're going to talk about some spiritual things. We're going to talk about some natural things, some technical things. Yeah. We talk about it all, but it's important that we do that. And this is your chance, your opportunity for you to also ask questions. So if you have any questions about worship, maybe you got some questions about things with your worship team. How can I? What can I? How do I do this? Where do I? This is your chance to ask those questions, whether it's technical. You don't have to be over spiritual in this thing. You ain't got a hasha, thus saith the Lord kind of questions, man. We just want to keep it real. This is just our chance to chat and to talk about worship and real deal stuff because it's what we are facing. I've got my brother on here, my brother, my friend, Nehemiah Samuel. He's on here. He's right here in the Tampa area with me. Go ahead and introduce yourself, bro. Tell them where you're from, where you serve at. Go for it, bro.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Nehemiah Samuel. I'm new to Tampa, Florida. Well, not so much new. I think I've hit my 7-month mark now. But I serve as the worship and creative arts director at Bible-Based Fellowship Church over on 4811 Ehrlich Road. And I'm excited. I've had some really cool experiences with working with various various churches and, you know, multicultural churches, predominantly African-American churches, worked at some predominantly white churches. And so I have had a very diverse background working with a lot of churches, musician, singer, songwriter. If you guys haven't checked out my single, Yahweh We Praise, go ahead and cop that real quick. We still need them streams. Amen. Hallelujah. And yeah, man, I'm just excited to be here and be a part of this conversation. Me and Darnel, we were together a few months ago over at the Crossover Church, and that was amazing. That was amazing. That was a really dope night. So I'm ready for round two. Let's get
Yeah,
it.
man. So I met Nehemiah actually some years ago. We both barely remember it, but when I was living in Daytona, and I think you were in Jacksonville, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah, we ended up doing something, and I met him. But I remember Danette talking about him. Danette used to sing with my group Ignition, and then it was so crazy how we connected back over here. LaRue called me and was like, "Oh, I want you to come to dinner with us. This worship
All
leader
right.
guy just moved here." I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, cool." I got there and I'm looking at him. I'm like, "No, I know this dude from somewhere,"
Right.
but it was like, yeah, whatever. So here's the crazy part. This will show you how nobody knows me at all. I was like, "Hey man, what's up? I'm Darnel." And I was like, "Yeah man, I met you before." He's like, "No, I don't think I've ever met you." He's like, "No, I've never met you." I'm like, "Yeah, I met you before, but it's all good, man. You know, you Nehemiah Samuel, bro.
No, no, no,
I'm
no,
just
no.
Darnel Butler. That's what it's, whatever it is."
Wow.
But for real though, man, God has an awesome sense of humor, and he's awesome because how he connected us. And since we reconnected at that dinner, man, we've been like close. We've been
Yeah.
brothers. I'm gonna give y'all a little tiny taste, and he don't even know it, but I'm gonna give y'all a little tiny taste of something that ever since we started meeting, and we've got another dude named Listen. Where he at? He need to be in here. And we've been talking and working on something, and I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. And I'm so excited to be a part of it because it's absolutely needed. So we've been talking about doing a conference, and not your typical normal worship conference. You know, a lot of people go to worship conferences, but look, you tagged them. Okay, that's why. So we've been talking about doing something a more technical worship conference. He came up with a great name for it and everything. I'm not gonna say it because I know we're still looking at what we're doing and everything, but something more on the technical level that speaks to people who have to deal with the technical aspects of worship. Now, I want to talk about this because I want to bring it up a little bit because I want to talk about it some, because a lot of people, they hear worship and they immediately go to this spiritual, like, oh, I lift my hands, everything I worship. But there's so much more to worship in the worship environment that always makes it work. And so we've been talking about doing a conference. There you go, Liston. What up, bro?
What's
And
up,
so
bro?
we've been talking about doing a conference that brings together the technical aspects of worship. Now, some of this stuff y'all may not understand. You may not know what it is, but it's just things that play a part. Everything from, what do we say, bro? Pro presenter together. So pro presenter is a big part of worship. A lot of churches use it. And how do I put my words on the screen? And how do I make this work? So we're talking about doing a conference that talks directly and features these things specifically. Pro presenter. What else do we say, bro?
And some of
Ableton.
everything. Ableton. Yeah, just running it down the list.
Lights.
Planning center.
Planning center. Yes, yeah. Bro. So we're talking about doing a conference where you can come and you can be educated on these very specific programs, because a lot of our churches that we have out there, and it's not saying it's bad or anything, but they would love to use these programs, or they just don't know about these programs. And we want to provide an atmosphere, a learning atmosphere, where churches and pastors can send their music directors, music directors, dance directors, sound engineers, lighting technicians.
Anybody who's working in the capacity of a church, like you it's something that you would be able to get out of it.
Right. And in some cases, some of y'all churches, you got people that have to do all those things. And so we're going to provide an environment where people can come in and can learn and grow, not only spiritually, but honestly, mentally. You know, they can grow and come back to their churches and enhance what they have. So I think that's necessary. I think it's missing. A lot of times you hear worship conferences happening, and you just got these phenomenal worship leaders that come and they speak and they talk and they do this kind of stuff. And it's good stuff. And we talk about the Bible, but what about the technical aspect of worship? How can I take my worship experience to another level by adding lights, and not even just the physical sense, but using Planning Center to schedule people to do my rehearsals with? How can I make my live stream better? Man, this would have been great for right now. You know what I'm saying? How do I get my live stream to look 100% the way it's like how he did that. Why did they get it like that? How come why mine don't sound like that? We're going to give and provide an avenue. And we're thinking of doing this next year in 2021 to do this conference where you can come in and learn from individuals of how to use stems, how to use multi-tracks, how to use Ableton. How do I run wires? What kind of soundboard do I use? How do I run that soundboard? How do I get my lights to work? What kind of microphone should I use for what situations? How come this doesn't work? You know, so it's going to be that opportunity. So mark your calendars, not for a date, but just keep that in mind that we are going to produce a conference in 2021 where individuals can come. So pastors, tag your worship leaders, tag your media directors, let them know we got Liston, Darnel, and Nehemiah coming up with something. We're going to have something where you can send them here and they can be poured into and they can be taught on how to do this stuff. I think, you know what? It's so awesome that you brought it up because this is actually Nehemiah's idea. He brought a lot of this up to me in Liston, but it's going to be perfect because I'm telling you, when we come out of this thing right here, these people are going to be like, bruh, where do we go to get this, man? Because it's been, I don't know about anybody else. My phone has been ringing off the hook. My email has been ringing off the hook with like, bro, help me. How do we get this and everything? So we're gonna educate and we're gonna provide a conference where these guys can come and get poured into. And don't worry, we ain't gonna hit nobody's pockets like that. But we want to pour into people because it's important. You know, when we talk about kingdom building, this is part of it.
Yeah.
The reality is, when it comes to kingdom building, I talk about it all the time, but you know, the look of it is important. Last week, Nehemiah, I'm not sure if you saw, but I think it was a Tuesday, I was talking about myself and I was talking about atmosphere and how important atmosphere is to the worship experience. And a lot of these things that we're talking about now creates atmosphere. You know, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the storefront, but there can be a difference walking into a storefront and going to worship and walking into the Potter's house and seeing the LED screens with everything. Everything creates atmosphere and people create atmosphere. So when you've got a media director, a video switcher, a lighting director, a sound technician, camera operators, musicians, singers, dancers, all that on this level of excellence, and they all carry this great atmosphere, it just enhances the worship experience. So we're going to be doing that. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, cool. Man, it's so much needed. You know, I mean, I'm excited for, you know, and especially for those churches who may not have the capacity to bring on, you know, a full-time media director, but you have someone who's dedicated to the ministry and they just, you know, they have some of the technical skills, but they need more advanced training. Like this will be an opportunity for you to send those people with the heart to really kind of help and enhance your own individual ministry in whatever area. So
that's the biggest thing for me. You know, some people know my story, but some people have also, they don't know. So I get the phone calls of, oh man, we can't get this to work. Call Darnel. And Darnel didn't go to school I didn't go to school for anything that I'm employed in. Like literally nothing I'm employed in. So when people call me to fix their live stream, I didn't go to school for live stream. I didn't go to school for sound. I didn't go to school for music. I never took a piano lesson. I never, none of this stuff. But I was trained. I would sit there. I was at Faith World under Pastor Clint Brown, and I would be in that booth and I'd watch people. I was in the gospel choir at Bethune-Cookman, and I didn't play piano. And I literally just watched the fingers of my choir director. Wow. And so you can be trained. And so it's important that people understand that. You know, it's important to make sure you have and you hire the right person, but they can also be trained. Some houses, they don't have the resources, like you said, to go out and hire the absolute person who costs a $60,000 salary. So pour into the people that you do have.
Absolutely.
That's literally what it is. Pour into who you do have. This is the worship leader I got to work with. Okay, well, don't just settle for that. Pour into them. Yeah. All right. I say the same thing all the time. I talk about musicians too. I say, you know what? Pour into these musicians, pour into these worship leaders, pour into your sound technicians. It doesn't always have to be financial, although that helps. Okay. But if you can pour into these individuals and help them get trained, man, there's just so much that they can do. So let's jump into some stuff, man. Let's dive in. I feel like we're going to step on some toes today, but it's okay. I want to start, and I want to start with a kind of a heavy one. And I want us to address it because a lot of people don't address it and they don't talk about it. But I want to address it. What are some frustrations that worship leaders have?
Got it.
Go ahead, bro. What's some frustrations that worship leaders have? I'm putting Nehemiah on the spot, y'all.
Yeah, frustrations that worship leaders have. I think you know, a big one is just kind of having that synergy that you would need to have from your team that you work with on your staff level down to your direct staff that you work with on your music department level, and letting that transcend to your congregation.
Yeah.
um it's that pipeline sometimes is all, sometimes it's all over the place. I know, worship leaders, they have to develop and foster really good relationships with the pastor, because the pastor, will kind of lead and direct them. But clarity is something that is so important for someone that is trying to lead a house in worship. And if you don't have that clarity, then sometimes you're taking the church somewhere where maybe the pastor doesn't want to go, or maybe the staff doesn't understand. And so, not having a clear, consistent path on where you are taking your department, or where you should be leading in worship is a killer. Is
Yeah.
a killer.
That's good. It's important. We talked about this before. Making sure that you understand the vision.
Mm,
It's important that we not just know the vision, we have to understand the vision, and then the reality is we have to be in line with the vision.
mm,
There's a lot of times that we as worship leaders and as worshipers on a team, we can know the vision, we can understand the vision,
mm.
but if we're not in line with the vision, it shows.
Right,
And we have to be very careful, especially for those of us that do it full time, that we don't just take the stance of, well, it's just my job, I just got to do it.
right.
It's important, because when you do that, I talked about it a couple weeks ago. You end up messing up everything. You end up messing up everything. Just because you want a job, just because you need a job,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you have to be at a house where you honestly just don't line up with it. And
Yeah.
I've met worship leaders who have been in that position where all they do is complain about where they are, who they're serving under.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't even know why this and everything, but yet they go every single week because they
Right.
need a job, and it's just complaining, and then they're frustrated because their music departments aren't growing, the things aren't happening the way they want. Bro, they're so out of line, they're so out of whack.
Mm.
And we talked about this a while ago. You got to have conversations.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Yeah.
afraid to talk with their pastors. You need to have conversations. I had to make hard decisions before where I had conversations with my pastors, and it was time to go.
Mm.
And that's just the reality. And it's better for the church. It's better for you as an individual, but you gotta have understandings. So you can't just know the vision. You can't just understand the vision.
Yeah,
You got to be in
absolutely. Absolutely.
line with the vision. And if
Absolutely.
you're not in line with this vision, a line is a line for a reason.
Right.
It's straight. As
Yeah.
soon as you step out of line, it becomes crooked, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you got to turn your head. You can't look down the where you're supposed to go, and so everything just tumbles and falls apart from there. So that's important. So you answer kind of the question, like, what can be some frustrations for worship leaders? As a worship leader, what can be frustrating about the worship experience? Where maybe some situations you've been in, what can be frustrating about the worship experience?
Um, as a worship leader,
What is going off? Is that your computer?
I think that's people texting me. Sorry.
He always texts on
um,
his computer, y'all. Always texts on his computer.
one of the things that that I know that can be frustrating when you're leading worship is is a is a is a team that's backing you, that's not invested. So is that's whether that's musicians or your background singers, who can't necessarily flow or pay or at least pay attention, what I'm saying, to where you're trying to steer
Yeah,
the worship to go to. That is always a frustration at times.
yeah,
That's always a frustration, because you can be, going in clear direction, but in worship atmospheres and praise or wherever, it's very important to have musicians that are like tuned in, a worship team that's being attentive to where we are at in the moment, so that we can all kind of go together,
Yeah.
and so pulling everybody as one can sometimes be a frustration, because sometimes you just have people who don't have that same buy-in or don't understand why they're on stage, but they just
Yeah.
want to be on stage because they like being on stage. They don't
Yeah.
really feel the purpose for being
Performance.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I have honestly argued with worship leaders about this before. Who come to me and say, man, yeah, because I talk all the time, man, how's it going? How's the ministry going? Man, it's going good, man. Man, these people, they can, they kind of just there. They come when they want to. I get this and everything. And my immediate response to them is kick them off.
Right.
I do it, y'all. You've heard me say it. Get rid of them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think me, you, and Listen were having this kind of conversation. We were at Maple Street Biscuit. That's our meeting place.
That's our place, y'all. That's our place.
And I remember we talking about it. It was like, man, this. Here's my answer, and people may not like this. Kick them out. Get rid of them. Start over. Start from the ground up. Most churches that I have gone to, honestly, I don't know if this is just God's sense of humor and he just knows how I deal with it. Most churches that I've gone to, I haven't really had to inherit anything because I don't know if they haven't had it or whatever it is. But I always had to start from the ground up. And I like that better, just for personal reasons. I like that better because I will weed them out. I will weed them out, whatever you want to call it. I will kick them out. I tell the pastors too, if your worship leader's coming to you saying they got problems with such and such, man, stop telling them, oh, come on, just work with it. Oh, come on, just deal with it. Just because you want people up on the stage, kick them out.
Yeah.
Sit them down, talk with them, figure it out. Because man, as a worship leader, dude, I understand his vision. I understand where he wants to go. So, but then I also, as a worship leader, I have direction too.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were talking about this before, what flow means, because flow is so important. I know you as a worship leader, you love the flow and you listen. And so I know that's gonna be a frustration for you if the people ain't there with you. Everybody want to do their own thing. And so in some situations, you just gotta start over, bro.
Yeah.
You got to get down to the bare minimum, start all the way over. And people don't like that. But you know what I found in those situations? That's where you find these people's hearts, man.
Yeah, listen. So you said that you typically came in places where you built from the ground up. I think the majority of the places that I've had to go to where I inherited. So I inherited people, I inherited attitudes, I inherited musicians and everything. And so the challenge, you're always gonna have that challenge when you're the new person coming in and then trying to get the people that were there to kind of line up with who you are. So you got to take time and build relationships. But there comes a certain point when you look at the people that you have serving on your team and you like, all right, this person isn't a good fit right now, and we need to, and you have to, like, you can't be afraid to make those changes. And sometimes those changes, man, that transition, oh, it can be tough and it can be rough, and but you find out that a lot of people hearts are not there that you thought were there when you put them in a position where you like, hey, why don't you take a break for a month or something like that, or a couple weeks, and it's just like, no, what, and man, I'll never forget, and I won't never say the church, but I never forget, man, I was at a church, and there was a lady, she just had such an issue because she was the worship, kind of filling in that spot before I got there, and she just had such an issue with me coming in that she allowed. And the thing was that she was a great, singer, great worshiper, was really good at what she did, but she allowed her enviness or jealousy or whatever to overtake her so much that people started to notice it on stage on a Sunday morning, right? Like you can see, like, oh, she got an attitude. She would be up there singing and be like, and so it finally got to the point where, I was like, I was like, hey, why don't you take a break so you can, figure it out? Because, you try to maneuver, man, and it all just came out. He was like, I'm the Levite of this house. I'm the, I'm, and all this stuff, man. And so, you never know like what things are hiding behind people's heart when they get up to lead worship. And sometimes you have to just kind of dismantle that stuff and like you said, start fresh, start over. Because if you remove those bad apples, man, it's so crazy because when I did that transition with just that one person, I think when I started the team, I don't know how to stop getting these messages. The beep on my phone. I'm sorry, on my computer. But when I think at the time there's like a few people serving. I removed that one person. I asked them to take a break, and I had like 5 more people come like within like the next 2 or 3 weeks that wanted to be a part of the team, but didn't want to be in the team when that person was on it or near it or whatever because they just knew all those things. So sometimes you just remove and let God do the rest, and then you might end up getting more people than what you had.
Yeah. I come sometimes sometimes you just got to tell these people straight up. You got to tell these people 100% straight up what the deal is. And I said it before, don't come in here to impress God with something that he gave you. Number one,
Mm, mm,
do not try to come up in here and try to impress God with something that he gave you. And I can smell that a mile away. I can spot it a mile away. I don't care how long you've been singing. I don't care what solo the person gave you beforehand. I just do not care.
mm.
You're not going to come up in here and try to impress him with something that he gave you.
Right.
So if that means you got to take a back seat, or like you said, hey, I just want you to sit down. You really learn a person's heart in that situation. You learn a person's heart in that moment, because if they can't handle that, oh my goodness, what are you gonna do when other people come in here and they got and they've got skills, and let's just be technical. What are you gonna do when somebody come in here and they better than you?
Right.
What
Right.
what 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 at what point? What do you do at that point? So it's important that we as worship leaders, as music ministers, that we have that spirit of discernment too, because there's a lot of times we'll see that, and because we want the numbers, or because I want that voice, and I need that part and everything, we'll let it go, and then those moments we are just as wrong as that person is. So it's important that we make sure we understand that. And pastors, don't you dare get upset with your worship leader when something like that happens, because I've seen that happen before too, where the
Yeah.
pastor's like, no, who are you? You can't sit her down. We need her to sing. We need all this kind of stuff. And then the pastor, guess what? You wrong.
Yeah. You have as a worship leader, you have a responsibility to protect the integrity of the worship experience,
Yeah.
and so I've been in places and in spaces where there were certain people who even when you wanted to have them on the team, you had to almost remove them because you knew what they were doing or the attitudes and what they were carrying out in worship could affect the overall worship experience. And so you have to make that decision of like, what, this isn't a season where you can serve right now because there are some things that God needs to do or you need to work in. And you have to be okay with making those calls. And it's not saying that that person isn't good, that you don't deserve that, all of that stuff. But it's just knowing, even if you got 2 people who are at differences in your team and you trying to resolve it and you can't resolve it. And every week, sister so-and-so got an issue with brother Joe, and every week it's an issue, somebody coming in with an attitude, and then it's a conversation that has to be had before you get up to lead worship or something like that. And so you might be like, hey, both of y'all just take a break because you have to protect the integrity of the worship in that moment.
Yeah.
And whether you think so or not, people are watching. When people, somebody could be in worship and be going, and they'll see one thing that looks off to them, and then all of a sudden that'll snatch their attention, and
Yep.
then they're like, you see how they
Yeah. That's
and
how
then
we like to talk.
right, and then the whole worship moment is missed, and then you over there trying to push the people, and you wondering, why they not getting with you, and they over there busy, looking like, why she looked at the musicians like that, cut her eyes at them. So you
That's
gotta
how
make the call.
that's how they like to talk. And then you and I both, because we're those types of worship leaders, where we have the sense of flow. I love the flow. I love the flow. For those that are watching, we talked about that. The definition of flow means to follow. And in order to flow in a worship atmosphere, you have to be able to follow the Holy Spirit. And so when you're doing that and you've got multiple people trying to do things, I say it like this. The worship experience will flow as long as it has a destination. It will flow as long as there's got to be some type of destination for it to flow to. And so in those moments when you've got people who have their own agendas, which means there's a bunch of different destinations that are trying to happen, but we're all trying to flow. We all want to flow, everybody go, but she trying to flow over here. He trying to flow over here. You brand new. I really don't like you. You called me out this week. You told me I can't sing no more. You said I could. You took my solo and gave it to somebody else. I'm all for teamwork. We want to try to make this work, but you still gave it away. Like that whole thing messes up the whole entire purpose of when we're talking about flow.
Absolutely.
And what it means to flow and what it means to have a conducive worship experience, a worship encounter. And that's usually my biggest frustration with worship teams as well, is that you got, to me, I'm like, oh, y'all sound good. That's it.
Right.
You know, I said all the time, just because you sing good don't mean you sound good.
Absolutely.
Just because you sing good don't mean you sound good. And when I say the sound, I'm talking about the sound of heaven.
Yeah. And that, and you know, and bro, and that's so good. You know, you said that because, you know, I've been in places where I've had, you know, a decent team, right? A worship team. And I've had to basically cut in half and work with a smaller group of people because those were the people whose hearts I could capture to line up with where we are trying to go worship, to set a culture. And then once that culture was set and developed in the people, whenever you bring somebody else in, now you're not lining up with our ideas and our culture for worship, then you become the oddball, and then you'll either remove yourself or you'll line up where we are. And so, you know, sometimes you have to think about it like that, because, you know, you got 10 people on the team, but only 2 people out of the 10 really understand or has the heart. You know, you doing devotions and you praying and we going into worship, and then you're seeing, you know, you in moments. I'll never forget, man, for like a month, I just came with my team and we just didn't have a rehearsal at a church I was at before, and we just came and we worshiped. And I was trying to get to a point. I was trying to get people to kind of develop that personal time. Yeah. And there was just one lady, man, you know, no matter how far we would get, she just was like, I'm here to sing. I don't, why I need to be, you know, really crying out. I sang, you know, and I was like, man, you got to take a break until you can, you know, because, you know, you're doing devotions, you know, you're talking about the importance of developing a relationship, you know, and you going over the, you know, how we commune with him and dwelling with him, and you trying to foster that atmosphere. You know, you even have one-on-one conversations like, when you worship, what does that mean? What does your personal worship time look like for you? You know, and she just, you know, she was just like, I'm just here to sing. Why do I need to do all that? And so I was like, cool. Well, you know, you might need to take it, because where this team is going, we're trying to be on one so we can go as one. And you just you got to know that. And sometimes, man, it is really tough making those calls. And because this particular person, like, she was a great asset. She was one of those singers that could sing soprano, alto, and tenor. And you love them because you can sing wherever, you can go right wherever you want.
Wherever I want.
Right. But, you know, had to set the culture.
And you got to be careful in those moments too. And I always tell our worship team this, like, I'm not just the worship leader. Everybody up there on that stage is a worship leader. Everybody's getting looked at, not the person that's in the very, very front holding the lead microphone. Every single person is a worship leader. And when you get that kind of atmosphere or that kind of personality or that kind of how that aura about you, bro, I'm not here to do all that. I'm here to sing. You needed singers. I'm here to sing. Where we totally forget about, we get so caught up sometimes in the experience. I've said this plenty of times. Don't get so caught up in the experience that you forget to have the encounter. Don't get so caught up in the experience that you forget to have an encounter, because it is a worship experience, but through the experience, my goal is to encounter him. There's a difference between an encounter and the experience. You can go to Disney World and have a wonderful experience, but there's something different if you at that castle and all of a sudden Mickey Mouse himself comes out and hey, hugs you, take a picture with her. All of a sudden now I had an encounter.
Yeah.
And so we can go, a lot of times we can get so caught up in going into our church buildings that we go in there and we go in and have this experience, but we totally forget to have the encounter with the person that we actually came to see. And so that's where the saints can mess up, because we'll go and get dressed up for the experience, but we'll totally forget about the encounter part. What song they singing today? They're not singing my song. I'm gonna get their second song. Then I can go be a little bit late. What are you preaching on? What's the series title? I already got all this down. We get so caught up in almost the ritual or the agenda or the program of church that we forget about the encounter with the Savior. We forget about the encounter with the King, and that's so important, bro.
And that's why, you know, and that's why there should be some type of accountability, and you should be required to really, you know if serving on the worship team is for you, because, you know, when you think about it, you know, people do that all the time with just coming to church on Sunday morning. And so just imagine when you have to, as a worship leader or a worship team, when you have to fight through that with the congregation, but then you have to also fight through it with your team. They're like, man, I'm just here to sing. I'm here to sing today. I'm tired. I had a bad weekend. You know what I'm saying? And I just want to sing. I really didn't feel like getting up this early to come, but I'm here. And now he trying to tell us, you know, about us for not being on time. And I just do this out of the kindness of my heart, you know. So don't tell me about being here on time. I'm here to sing. You know what I'm saying? So
attitude.
Yeah.
They have that attitude. But you have to do it. And I mean, I say it a lot of time. So I know why there's a difference between a worship leader and a worship pastor. There is a difference. All right. Because you do have some people who just are here and they just lead songs.
Yeah.
But then you got people that are here who truly pastor the people.
Yeah.
So it's important that you. That's why I said this before. I think I was having a conversation. I think my mom was in on it too. But the house that you're in is so important. The reality is the house that you're in is so important. Now, don't get me wrong, because there's been times where I've gone to a house and been a part of a ministry and served under a ministry, because that's where God called me, and what he wanted me to do was to go and establish some foundation.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, pastors. Don't get mad sometimes when the worship leaders, it's time for them to go, because sometimes it's time for them to just come and set some foundation.
Yeah.
All right. And once their time is up from setting that foundation and you've got something stable that you can stand on, it may be time for them to go somewhere else and establish some foundation. You know, I've seen lots of times where the pastors, and they get so upset because they left. And it was, he used us and they did. Nah, bro, he did what God called him to do.
Right.
What they have to understand is that there is still relationship there, and that God calls us to do different things during different seasons.
Absolutely.
And so it's important that we understand that, and that we make those things happen. We talked about a couple of weeks ago, staying how silly you can be when you stay past your season. And that when you stay past your season, you can be as silly as a flower trying to come up in the wintertime. You know, and so it's so important that we understand when it's our season and when it's our time. And that comes from us spending time with him.
Absolutely.
You got to spend time with him. So, you know, I love it when I hear worship leaders talking about things that they do other than rehearsals. Because I ask that question all the time. Y'all know I do. I say, well, what do y'all do outside of rehearsals? What do y'all do where you're pouring into your people? You haven't. I tend to, and this is not a bragging moment, but I've learned this from people. But I tend to not have that many problems with my team, and I know it's because I develop relationship outside of just teaching songs. It's so much more to being a worship leader than just picking the songs, teaching some notes, and everything else. If you can't be their worship leader and their leader outside of the rehearsal time or outside of the Sunday morning experience, then you're going to have those problems. You've got to pour into it. I know people look at me crazy sometimes when I tell them, every last Tuesday of the month, we don't rehearse. We have chapel nights where we just pour into each other. And I pour into my team. They don't got to go up there and sing. They come and they get poured into. You know, that is important to me. It is so important to me, because then when people go back and they watch a worship service and say, man, your team, they're all together. How do you get it to do this and everything? It's not from rehearsals. Right. It's the time that we spend outside of rehearsals. And I think that's so important that individuals understand that, especially when it comes to worship. You have to understand that it takes more than just the technical, because we can all do that, bro. I can teach you songs. You can come and sing, and this is your note, this is your note, this is your note. And then I'm yelling at you, you're late, but this is still your note. And then we get up there and we try to get before the people. And sometimes we try to exaggerate the mess out of this experience. Right. We will try to exaggerate the mess out of the experience. And God ain't even pleased. John said something so powerful last week, bro. And he was like, I just want to make sure that he is smiling. And if he ain't smiling, I'm not winning. Absolutely. I was like, dude, that never hit more. I'm like, man, if he ain't smiling, I'm not winning. Not winning, yeah. And so is what I'm doing on a weekly basis with my team, with my people, is that making him smile? I literally look at this now, like, what I'm about to do, is this gonna make him smile? Man, I had the conversation, you know, you said so many good things, you know, and back on, we're still talking about our original topic a little bit, is when you talk about a frustration sometimes for worship leaders, sometimes, you know, finding that time to do all the things that are required to make that happen. You know, I said something right before COVID had really kind of changed the way that we were doing church. I looked at my team, I looked at everybody, and I said, because my pastor said something to the church, and I took that and I evaluated where we were at as a ministry, as a team. And I asked myself the question, I said, am I doing all that I can, or am I and our worship and creative arts department as a whole doing all that we can to make sure that God is smiling when we get up, you know? And I looked at it, I was like, we gotta do some things better in this season. We gotta do some things better. And when you talk about relationship, you know, that is something that is just so important, being able to spend time with people, because and the funny part about it is that you can correct people easier once you get more time, once you spend more time with them. Once they know you a little bit more, then it's easier for you to be like, hey, you late, and this is the third time. And you know how I feel about it. So what's going on, you know? But sometimes when you jump right in and you come in and you don't have that relationship there, man, it makes things so much more harder for you to facilitate your job and your duties as a shepherd. You know, you said worship pastor, you know, and worship leaders and just singing the song. Like it's so much, there's such a big difference in that. It is, because if you don't know, if you aren't a people person, if you can't deal with people and not just, you know, you can have a conversation with somebody who you have to kind of be like, you need to calm down, but you have to switch and have a conversation with somebody that you might have to lift up. You may have to have difficult conversations with, you know, one of your choir members who always coming late, you know. And so, but you have to be able to deal with people basically through the lens of how God would deal with you, and always be remembering that you're trying to shepherd people, and that you have to have a heart for people. And if you don't have that heart, then you may not be ready to do it up here yet. Yeah, we have to be very careful as well, because while there is the technical aspect of it, and we're so busy managing so much stuff, we have to make sure that I'm trying to think how I can put this nicely. We can get so strategic that we worship so things will grow. We can get so strategic that we worship so our church will grow. We worship so our team will grow. We worship so our following will grow. We get so strategic on how we worship that we do it for all the wrong reasons.
Oh.
And so we got to be very, very careful that we don't get so strategic that we forget that we worship because he is worthy, period. We can be our mindset, especially when you're full-time staff and you're looking at this, because church is business. And so we start looking at numbers. What can we do to put butts in seats? Sorry, what can we do to do this? We can hold 500 people. Why we only got 250? How do we get the other 250 people in here? How can we enhance this? So while you still want to enhance the worship experience and you want to make things better, we can be so strategic that we only do it, that we catch ourselves worshiping because we want things to grow. We want church to grow. We want team to grow. We want things to be better physically and everything. And we forget about the spiritual connection of, no, we worship because he's worthy. Yeah. Once we connect those dots, the worship, we worship him because he's worthy. He'll provide the rest. Sometimes we don't even take what we need to God in prayer. We take what we need to a strategic meeting of how we can fix things in order to get it. So at that point, it's almost like you try to play God. Well, I'm not saying that we totally feel this way, but instead of taking the God, we want more people. Do it, God. We'll make things excellent for you. You bring the people. Now we say, okay, how can we fix this to get more people?
Right.
And everything. So we have to make sure that we don't get so strategic in our worship that we start worshiping the strategy of trying to get people in the building.
Man, you know? And I'll tell you, bro, you know, that was something that I really had to learn myself, because I would get so caught up in the work that I would let the work overtake my worship, you know. So I would, you know, and I never forget, one of my mentors was like, hey, you doing all this work, but you forgetting your worship. And, you know, I would come in, you know, weekly tasks, you know, staff meetings, trying to make sure rehearsal right, got to get the musicians together because they ain't rehearsed this, you know, all of these things as you go. And then you get to Sunday morning and you're like, oh yeah, God, I love you. I thank you. I'm here. I'm here for you. You know, you basically run through the whole week. And it's so funny because sometimes for those of us who are leaders, you put more of an emphasis in pouring into others that you forget to be you pour back into yourself. And then you get up on Sunday morning and you like, you know, I'm not there. And then you have to figure out, you know, how do you rejuvenate yourself? And I love what you said about churches, because a lot of times, you know, we do that a lot. You know, we almost kind of pimp out our worship experience to whatever's going to get people in, you know. And you may be doing things that's not even the identity, DNA or of your church. You know, you might be a church that you get people who love your gospelly feel, you know what I'm saying, the churching, you know. I was talking the other day, you know, Antoine Cook's church, you know, Experience Christian Center, like, man, they have a whole vibe, man. You go in there and you're gonna have some good church, you know what I'm saying, gospel. It's just gonna drive. And that's you know, and then they worship, but that's something that really sticks out for that ministry. You know, other people, some churches will try to mimic, you know, this whole elevate music, you know, Bethel music vibe or whatever, and it's just not where you are at as a church. So but we do that a lot. We like, all right, what can we do to get people in here, just, you know, to do something for our worship? And it may not even be who you are as a church.
That's just really what it really is. Just because you like it don't mean it's for you. That's just the reality. That's the way of the world. Just because you like it doesn't mean it's for you. Oh, I love this. I love that. I want to do that. Is that for you? Is that really what you're for? And that's where we miss the mark sometimes, even with our calling, and you know, making sure that we've got it. And that's another big worship leader frustration. You know, I've seen where worship leaders have gone into situations and they've got this expectation, they've got this vision, everything. And then all of a sudden leadership comes and says, well, they're doing it like this, so let's try it like this. And all of a sudden the worship, wait, that's not even who we are. That's not the DNA. That's not what you told me. That's not what we talked about or any of that thing. And then all of a sudden emotions start going crazy on both sides. You know, emotions start going crazy. And that's where worship leaders can really get kind of jacked up and lose focus and everything. You know, emotions play a big part in worship. Sorry, pastors, you may not like to say that and everything, but emotions can play a major part in worship. But honestly, sometimes we just don't feel like it. That's just the reality. Honestly, sometimes we as worship leaders, people, we just don't feel like it. But but ultimately, we just have to worship.
Yeah.
We have to worship. We got to worship God anyway, no matter how we feel. That's the reason it's called a sacrifice of praise. It's a sacrifice that you give. So while emotions play a major role in it, and while we may struggle and not feel like it, you worship anyway. That's why he calls it a sacrifice of praise. It's a sacrifice that we give to him and say, I'm in spite of, I'm going to worship you anyway. I may be frustrated, God, but I'm going to trust you with this situation and I'm going to worship you anyway. Here's my sacrifice. Here it is, God. And you got to just lay it all out there. You just got to give that whole thing to him, because without it, we fall, we flop, everything.
Absolutely.
So before we get ready to go, I usually ask this, but I didn't even let nobody ask. If anybody has any questions for Nehemiah, you have any questions about worship in general, put it in the chat. You can ask those questions. We got about 10 minutes left. I'll let you guys ask those questions now. If you have any questions about worship, about anything that has to do with what we talked about, or even what we didn't talk about, you just have a question that you want to get an answer to with Nehemiah and I on here, please ask that question, and we'll answer your question now before we get ready to go. This is been good talk. Sometimes you just got to talk real, man. Every once in a while, you just got to get down and just talk about it and let people know this is just the reality of what it is, because there's still too many people out there that think all we do is pick a song and teach it and sing on a Sunday and go home and chill out the rest of the day. Like, they don't realize that it is. Look, this thing is a calling, man. It is a calling.
Yeah.
And I ran for it for a long time. I was like, I don't want to do
it. You gotta stay, it is it's most certainly a calling. And anybody who, is in this type of capacity working for a church, if you aren't called, man, you'll mess yourself up, because there are some days where you will feel defeated, depleted, where you will feel empty, where people will step on your feelings, where you have to, I say this all the time. I'm like, Lord, I'm so tired of being a bigger person. Like, being real, like, God, why do I have to always be the bigger person? Why do I always have to be the peacemaker when I want to tell Sister Sally Sue to get the heck on? You just get out, you know what I'm saying? But it's like God requires you to handle his people with care. And it's something that you have to be prayed up about. You have to stay on your knees, man. Like, I remember coming up and really kind of coming up through, I guess, the ranks of being able, from where I started, from just being a musician to MD to administer music to now worship and creative arts director. And I think I said this when I was at when we came over to your church. If you don't stay with your ear to the ground, or your ear to listening to what God is saying and paying attention to where he's leading you and how he's leading you, man, you will miss the mark. And when you miss that mark, you will be in a situation that you just, that you don't want to be in. So it's so important to always kind of be in that place where you're hearing from God and allowing him to kind of help you navigate with the people, that you're dealing with and that you're working with.
Yeah, bro. I'm with you, man. My wife, anybody would tell you that one of the things that I still need to work on is my facial expressions. I'll be ready to go in, Doc. I'll be ready to go in. Like, bro, you know what? What, bro? Okay, all right. I'm still working on that. So here's a question: how can you know this house is the right place for you to serve? Is that a question, Mom? Or is she answering her own question, Pastor, worship leader, Pastor Connection? How can you know this house is the right place for you to serve? I guess really that's kind of the question. How do you know that the house you're in is the right place for you to serve?
Man, I think, first and foremost, you have to be led there. But I know sometimes that the spirituality side of it can sometimes be lost on people. But if we're just talking technical, what are some things in the natural? Do you like the church? Do you like the pastor? Can you see yourself serving there in a long-term capacity? And with you being there, can you see that there's something that you can bring to that ministry that will enhance it? And is just something that will enhance you. Because there are things that you see in this ministry that will help you grow. And a really important thing is this a safe place for you to grow?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can go somewhere and they require something from you that you may not have that skill set yet, and it exposes you too much. Like I tell everybody, one of my mentors, he was like, man, before you, and this is before I'm where I am at now, but he was like, before you take on anything larger than where you are, you have to master how to be an administrator. Because if you don't, you're going to get to a church where you have to, at the time I was at a smaller church, managing probably at max 30 people, right? At max. To now at a church managing like 150 plus, almost 200, people working with different groups, auxiliary groups, all different kind of ministries. And at the time, I was just at a place where I wasn't that good of an administrator. But where the church that I was at, my pastor was able to like, hey, let me show you some things, and hey, you can get with different people, you can learn. And I picked up those skill sets and things that I needed that carried me to where I am now. So now I'm at a bigger level, but I'm not lost on the basic things that I would need to be able to do, right? And it's enhancing my skills. So it has to be a safe place for you to be able to grow. And if you can start answering some of those questions in terms of a ministry, if this is the right place for me to serve, am I going to be able to eat from the word, or do I just like the glam of the ministry? And be honest with some of the things that you see, and try to foresee, what, you can't always know, but what frustrations you might have with being at a ministry. Do the pros and the cons, basically.
That's good. Another question comes in and says, does your church teach the importance of worship in other ministries within the church? For example, kids, prayer ministry, etc.
I think that is always a challenge, right? Because depending on the church size, depending on the aim and the goal of the church, sometimes in certain areas of the church, worship can be lost, and so I think it's important to be intentional. I think you as the worship leader, worship director, or whatever capacity you hold, it is important for you to try to help facilitate and foster those moments, in your youth department. If you have an opportunity, get with your youth pastor, and maybe have some moments where you can work with the young people and do things to kind of help push that worship culture.
Yeah, I know the person that asked that question, and we're on the same page because I just think it's so important. I talked about it probably the very first week I started doing this, and probably still continue to talk about it. I believe it's so important in these churches that we teach worship, that we don't just expect people to come in and do worship, but that we teach worship, starting for the kids to the teenagers, to how important it is for these different departments and these ministries. They have to be able to understand it. We can't just expect that everybody's going to come in and all of a sudden lift their hands and start singing and then say that was worship.
Right.
Like, people have to understand the totality of worship, because there's so many different makers of it. And we're real quick to say, now it's time to worship in our giving. Well, what does that look like? Because to a newborn Christian, I thought worship was singing slow song. That's just literally what it is. So we're so quick to be church cliche and say these certain things that, and then people grow up, and as adults, they just, oh, let's worship. So they automatically get into this posture of hands lifted, close eyes, and sing as if this is all worship is. And so it's I'm with this question because I think it's so important. That's why I teach my kids what worship looks like. And that's why, for me, it's so important that my kids see me outside of a building, outside of a platform, worshiping, because I don't ever want them to think that worship is just daddy's job.
Right.
It's so important that they understand and know what worship really is. So it is so important that worship is taught, not just to kids, not just to teenagers, but to adults. as they're
Absolutely.
coming in, and not just an expectation that we have for you to do. Worship is the first 15 minutes of the service. Worship is the first 20 minutes of the service. You know what I'm saying? And not taught exactly what worship is. So that's important.
Absolutely.
So this was awesome conversation, bro. I appreciate you being on here with me and talking and discussing these things with me. You guys that came on late, if you didn't hear, or if you're gonna go back and watch the replay, be on the lookout for this conference that we're planning now. That's gonna be happening next year. This hands-on conference that's gonna talk and deal with and teach and have hands-on moments on using technical things like ProPresenter, lighting situations, sound technicians, Ableton, all these different avenues, planning center. I know y'all, the person that asked that question, she can't stand planning center. Sure, planning center. It's a wonderful tool. All these wonderful assets that will help your church. We're going to be doing all that stuff. So how can we get his music, bro? Tell him how to get your music, bro.
Anywhere, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. It's on all digital music platforms, and it's called Yahweh We Praise. Yes. And also we got some new music coming out right at the end of the year, so be on the lookout for that.
Y'all see his name right there. It says Nehemiah Samuel. Y'all go Google, iTunes, Spotify, everything him. His music is there. He's got some great stuff. Be on the lookout, man. This dude's doing big things in the kingdom. Proud of him. He continues to exceed my expectations every single time. And so I'm so proud of him and honored to be a part of his life and see what God is doing. So we're excited for you, bro.
Thanks, bro.
Excited for you. Have an awesome, wonderful day, guys. Thank you guys so much. Hey, guys, don't forget, tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., it is Worship Wednesday. We'll be right here on my Facebook page and also the Crossover Facebook page. We're going to do worship at 11 a.m. in the morning. And then on Thursday, we're right back here for Let's Talk Worship at 2 p.m. with my special guest, Drew Baxter. Drew Baxter is going to be with me this coming Thursday. And then 1 week from today, we have the one and only Trinity Anderson. Trinity is going to be on Let's Talk Worship. Phenomenal worship leader. She's the worship leader at Deeper Fellowship, which is under Pastor William McDowell. She's going to be on here with us. So we've got a couple great sessions that are coming up. Stay tuned every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. for morning worship. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 o'clock. Let's Talk Worship. I just saw Antoine on here. He don't know it, but I'm going to get him on the show too. I'm going to get him on this Let's Talk Worship sessions. But God bless everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we love you guys.